Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Kevin picked up the ringing phone and frowned. It was Margaret, his daughter. Her calls hadn't boded well lately, but he hadn't expected this. "Daddy, I need your help right away. I accidentally hit a man." Her daughter's voice was breaking. She was out of breath, either from terror or something else. "Stop! Don't panic. Is he alive? Where are you?" After hearing Margaret's answer, he quickly packed up and went to help out and to sort out what had happened and to do everything in his power to save his wayward child and from criminal punishment and from further ruining her own life. What can you do? Only daughter, late child. They are often spoiled to the last degree. What else could it be? Long awaited, begged from God, begged child, whose birth was a miracle. How can you forbid him anything? How can you refuse? Especially if the parents are well-to-do. And what else do they work for? And in general live as not for their child. It's a miracle that if you hurt him, he'll disappear. Yes, she and Nancy waited 20 years for the birth of a child. That is, they didn't wait any longer. For the first 10 years of their marriage, they hoped, Nancy was treated, even decided to have some kind of operation, but it was all useless. Then they just waited, what if? And then they just accepted it. Well, there are childless couples. It's a shame, of course, but what can you do if it's not given? They loved each other. Besides, they both worked, loved their work. In those years, Kevin was able to open his own business, earn even more, but also spend more time at work. However, he always lived well. His parents were not the last ones either. Kevin, after their death, got a luxury apartment and money, and even a housekeeper. It was a distant relative of his parents, a girl a little younger than Kevin. A little, as they say, plain. She lived with her parents in the village, and after they died, this Doris could not live alone. Here, Kevin's mother took her into the house as an au pair. The girl turned out to be in a domestic sense smart, quick-witted, and soon became indispensable, especially after the death of Kevin's parents. Nancy worked at a minor position, was an engineer in a research institute, but there was no time for housekeeping and no habits either. Why bother trying if Doris would do everything? So in time, their resignation to childlessness coincided with changes in their lives. Kevin became a businessman, and Nancy became unemployed. Her research institute, already useless, ceased to exist. This plunged the woman, who was a long way from retirement, into despair. Kevin consoled his wife as best he could. "Don't work. You have enough money now. Have a rest." "Don't you understand, Kevin? It's not about money. It's about life losing its meaning. You've got a job, and I've got what? Nobody needs me. A barren, infertile, good-for-nothing, worthless, aging woman. Do you need me? Don't make things up. I'm just a nuisance to you. If it weren't for me, you'd have found a young, beautiful, capable of bearing children." Such a mood of his wife frightened Kevin, but how to help her he did not know. He even promised to take her to work, even as a secretary, but she refused. Depression prevented her from even getting up in the morning to walk her husband to work, and then it turned out that the matter was even more serious. Nancy had lost her appetite. All food seemed intolerable, which irritated her enormously. "Doris, did you not salt the omelette at all? And the eggs must be rotten. They smell of fish, I think, or something. The cottage cheese is too fatty, and there's too much sugar." "Ah, you've completely forgotten how to cook." Doris wondered. Everything was cooked as usual, even better than usual. After all, now Kevin brought home only the best products, and she bought not at the store, but at the market, where everything is fresh and tasty. So after suffering for a few days from the nagging of the landlady, she, strangely enough, was the first to realize what was wrong. "I'm thinking, Nancy, they say they've got these doughs now. Why don't we get some?" "What kind of test, Doris? Water makes me sick, and you and your pies." Nancy nearly cried. "No, I don't mean the dough. My neighbor's daughter had the same problem, and then she bought some kind of test at the drugstore. I don't know how to use it, but my daughter bought it, and it turned out that she was pregnant. Pregnant, that is, already with a big belly. I wish you'd try it, because you're just like your neighbor's daughter. You can't eat, and you smell wrong, and you don't sleep well." Nancy listened to the housekeeper's chatter, stunned. Could it be that what she had dreamed of for nearly 20 years had finally come true? She hadn't even noticed. Only Doris, who had never been pregnant or married, had guessed. Nancy shook off her stupor, fussed. "Where did you say these tests were?" "At the drugstore." "Run, hurry up." "No, wait, I'll do it." "Oh, really, Doris? Is there gonna be a baby?" "Oh, phew, phew, don't jinx it." It turned out that Doris was right. Her mistress was pregnant. However, Kevin was also informed about it, and his delight was unbounded. After so many years of waiting, after despair and hopelessness, suddenly, it was hard to believe. But how could I not believe it when several different tests showed a single and undeniable result? The next day, excited, hardly believing in her happiness, Nancy went to the doctor, got the final confirmation, and got on the register. The waiting began. Pregnancy was difficult. Her husband and housekeeper did not let the dust fall on Nancy, endlessly discussing the upcoming happy event. Despite all the difficulties, just in time, a healthy and beautiful girl, Margaret, was born. Is it any wonder that for the 3 adults, this long-awaited child became the center of the universe? All life was now built around Margaret, her first smile, her first tooth, her first word. Any, the most unconscious action of an infant seemed a sign of genius. It evoked admiration, the desire to thank the heavens and the girl herself for the fact that she appeared in life, filling it with meaning, joy, hope for a better future. Margaret grew accustomed to this admiration, taking it for granted. She knew no denial of anything. She felt like a princess, and when she grew up, she felt like a queen. She studied, however, well. The adoration of her parents seemed to spread to the rest of the people. She was loved by teachers, peers, and neighbors, and it seemed that there was a reason, a beautiful, capable girl, going through life with a dazzling smile, looking at the world wide open, cheerful eyes. How could one not love her? Some people really said, "You spoil her too much." But who set those limits? Who could say what was too much and what was in moderation? And Margaret wasn't exactly a spoiled, sassy. No, just a confident girl, that's all. The father began to notice something wrong with his daughter's behavior only when she turned 16. It was at this time that Nancy became seriously ill. Maybe the disease had matured before, but she just did not pay attention, and when it became impossible to turn a blind eye to the painful condition, it turned out that it was too late to treat. Doctors were frustrated, and the age of the patient was no longer young. The daughter seemed to sympathize with her mother, worried about her, but she was more concerned about herself, about her way of life not changing in the slightest. "Margaret, is Mommy going to the hospital?" Doris asked shyly, seeing that Margaret was not going to the hospital at all, but on her own merry way. "Oh, go yourself today. I already went last week. Say hi to your mom." "I can't today. We're going on a camping trip." "I can't let the guys down, can I?" The girl answered, "Yes, Yes, yes, sighed Doris, who had always regarded Margaret not only with love, but also with a kind of slavish adoration. I'll go, of course, I'll tell her. Take a walk, my dear, take a walk. When you're young and green, take a walk. It was a saying Doris used to justify Margaret's antics. Kevin gloomed, looking at such behavior of his daughter. How can one treat his mother with such indifference, knowing that she may have nothing left to live for? Once he tried to express it to his daughter Margaret, but the answer frightened him even more. Oh, Daddy, what are you saying? She doesn't have long to live, but at least she's lived, and so have you, by the way. You accuse me of selfishness, but what are you like? You and Mom have lived in your own pleasure. You had everything and youth and maturity, and now it's getting to old age, so what? Everything's fine. Where have you seen old age without disease? And where have you seen life without end? You lived at your own pleasure, even had a child, me, that is, when you were already 40. It seems that you gave birth to me so that I could serve you in your old age. Have you asked me if I'm satisfied with it? After all, you have Doris. I love you very much, but I don't want to ruin my life. What are you talking about, daughter? That's not why we gave birth to you so late. It's just the way it is, and still Mom probably deserves better treatment. Kevin said, confused. Where am I treating her badly? I treat her fine. I go to the hospital when I have time, and when I don't, what am I supposed to do? I have to study. I need to be involved in the community, not sit with my sick mother all day long. Besides, why are you burying her? Maybe she'll outlive us all too. Nancy, of course, outlived no one. She passed away. Margaret cried at the cemetery, cried at home, but my father didn't feel that she was really grieving. She would cry, but then she would jump up and go about her business, remembering not to put on makeup or dress up. What can you do? She was 18 years old at that time. She had already entered the institute, the same one where Kevin studied many years ago. Almost independent life began without her mother, and it was a fun life. Margaret studied at the institute without much effort, perceiving the student years as an opportunity to have fun and experience new impressions. Her father did not refuse her money, loved her, and after Nancy's death, he also pitied her and saw her as the only relative. She saw in her father a similar source of good income, which allowed her to visit fashionable resorts during vacations and clubs and restaurants during the rest of the time. Margaret did not limit herself in anything, lived to the fullest. In the second year, she was almost expelled for truancy, but only thanks to her father's efforts, she stayed in the institute and even began to take her studies more seriously, but more for looks. Her father tried to influence her, but it was useless. Margaret learned to manipulate Kevin much more skillfully, and then it came to the final hurdle. The daughter ran over a man. The victim appears to be alive, but somehow that doesn't make it any easier. Kevin was not going to put his daughter in jail, but if you leave this case without proper attention, there will be no end. I mean, there would be an end, but a terrible one. The father understood that Margaret might be quiet for a while, but he could not expect her to take her mind off it. We have to stop this outrage, or her antics will do no good. He thought as he hurried to the scene of the accident caused by his daughter, who had finally lost her conscience. Margaret didn't think her behavior was too reprehensible at all. What was she doing that was so terrible? She had entered the institute. She was studying, as well as she could, as well as she studied, not worse than others, by the way. But the rest of her behavior, thanks to Doris saying, was justified by the same young green. And that's really an argument. But really, to think about it, how much of that youth was left? And here she will graduate from the institute, get married, have children, and that's it. After all, this is the end of carefree life. You might say, that is, the beginning of a completely different life from which to expect special surprises are not necessary. There will be only worries and hardships. No, youth should be used to the fullest, and if someone does not like it, it is not her problem. Father must have grown old. He doesn't understand anything. He doesn't remember his youth. On this unhappy day, everything was as usual. She woke up towards lunchtime when her father was gone, and Doris, the faithful Doris, did not even think of making any remarks. She, as always when she saw Margaret awake, rejoiced, alighted upon her. "Are you awake, my darling?" Oh, Daddy was angry again. Angry that you came late, that you slept so long, but I didn't let him wake you up. You were tired, all in your studies. "Oh, Doris dear, you are the only one who understands me," sighed Margaret. "Will you make me something to eat for breakfast? I'll go to the bathroom." Come, fishy. I'll make you something. What kind of juice do you want? Orange or pomegranate? Well, pomegranate, it's kind of healthy, but you know what? Don't make any. I'll drink coffee juice, then something else. I'll have a sandwich with fish, and all this porridge, eggs, don't do that. Oh, of course, why should you eat too much? It will be hard on your tummy. Doris agreed with every statement of her favorite. If Margaret had said that she wanted grated bricks for breakfast, the housekeeper would not have been surprised, but would have run to prepare this strange dish. When she came out of the bathroom, a fresh, fragrant Margaret ate her breakfast, kissed Doris, and went, as she said, to live her life. She didn't want to do it herself, so she went to a beauty parlor. I'd borrowed the money from my father the day before. After that, it was still necessary to visit a fashion boutique, to buy there an outfit, because summer is coming, vacations, which means travel and adventure. The time of very big purchases is approaching, but it is already later, and now it is necessary to dress up only for visiting the club, which is also important. Having had a great time at the club, Margaret started to go home. She remembered that she shouldn't make her father too angry, because she had to spend this summer vacation and prepare for it. But the time for fun flew by so fast, and no matter how hard she tried to go home early, and in as decent a manner as possible, it didn't quite work out. Oh well, maybe her father wouldn't notice. There's nothing criminal about her behavior. Indeed, she didn't drink so much alcohol that she couldn't drive. She'd done it many times before, and it had always worked out fine. Margaret was not drunk, but she drank a little bit. But she realized that you cannot drive fast in such a state. You must be careful. But it was almost night now. There were almost no people, no cars either. So Margaret put on the gas. She liked to drive fast, and this time everything would have gone without any accidents if suddenly, out of the blue, some rascal had not come out on the road at the most inopportune moment. It didn't seem to be a big jolt, but the pedestrian, a young man, fell to the ground and didn't move. Margaret, on shaky legs, got out of the car, approached the victim. "Oh my God, what happened? Are you alive? What happened? What happened? What do we do?" With the wrong hands, she touched the pulse on the guy's neck, seemingly alive, but unconscious and bleeding. No, she can't do anything on her own. Flee the scene. Oh no, that's even worse. She can't do that. She pulled out her cell phone, dialed her father's number. "Daddy, I need your help right away. I accidentally hit a man." Panicked, she mumbled into the phone. "He's alive, I think, but unconscious, and I don't know what to do. There's blood. I don't know, I'm scared." "Don't do anything, wait. I'll be there in 10 minutes. In a metallic tone, The father said, "But thank God he's coming. He'll sort it out. Of course he will." "Yes, it won't be for nothing. It'll start now. I told you, you can't do that." "Why? Why? How can I ask him for money now? But never mind. Somehow, it's not about that now. We have to think. And that one, he jumped out too. Why were you sneaking around at night? You've got me in so much trouble now. Where am I going on vacation now? Father's coming is going to start." Kevin arrived, as promised, 10 minutes later. He looked menacingly at his daughter, approached the victim. "You didn't call anywhere else? Didn't call an ambulance?" he asked Margaret grimly. "No, of course not. I was waiting for you." The daughter replied pitifully, frightened and confused, although the first fright had already passed. "You waited while the man was bleeding. And if he had died, I called the doctors. I hope everything will be all right. That's why I waited for you. I knew you'd do it, but where would I have called? I'd have called the ambulance, and they'd have called the police, and what would have happened? You want me to go to jail, don't you?" Margaret whimpered. "If I wanted that, you would have been there a long time ago." Kevin said irritably, "Jail? Not jail, but you need to be reformed, and I'll do it, you'll see." "You do it, Daddy, you do it. I'll do whatever you want me to do. Just please, this case has to be taken care of somehow." The matter was, of course, taken care of, thanks to Kevin's efforts. He called the doctors. The victim was taken to a private clinic, and the police were not informed. The young man's condition was determined to be serious, but not hopeless. Father and daughter calmed down somewhat and went home. Margaret went to bed, hoping that the incident would not have any serious consequences. The father would grumble a little, and it would be all right. It wasn't the first time. She would have to act like a good girl for a few days, but what can you do? Sometimes you have to, because it was really her fault. But in the morning there were some unpleasant surprises. Father woke Margaret up at 8 o'clock in the morning. "Daddy, what's wrong?" She mumbled unhappily. "I just fell asleep, didn't you? Don't you remember what happened? You almost killed a man yesterday, and now you're going to sleep?" "No, sweetheart, you're not going to get away with it. Get up," I said. "Get dressed. Your partying is over. Let's go to the hospital and talk to the victim." Kevin said decisively, "What's there to go to him for? We could call him, see how he's doing. Or you can go alone, Dad." Margaret asked pitifully. "I'm ashamed of him, honestly, Daddy. I'm so ashamed, both to him and to you. Why don't you go and make the arrangements? Give him some money? Or something, I don't know what. And I'll sleep. I'm very tired. I don't feel well." Margaret whimpered in a child's voice, hoping it would impress her father. But no, Kevin was as serious and even stern as ever, something Margaret was not at all used to. "I told you, get up and let's go. I didn't go out at night, and I didn't run anyone over. You need to go see this man yourself. Apologize to him, talk him out of filing a police report, and don't think it's going to go away just like that. We need to find out what his injuries are and see what you're in for if they're serious." "Why are you scaring me, Dad? How serious? What could I be in danger of? What are you gonna do? Send me to prison for reform?" "Thanks. I didn't expect this from you." "I didn't expect a lot of things from you either," replied my father, apparently not going to give up on his scheme. "Quickly get ready and let's go. And do not get ready like you do for your parties, but normally comb your hair, get dressed, wash your face, and that's it. Don't tease people with your outfits and your coloring, and there's no time for that." "All right, I'm gonna go play the good girl, genuinely remorseful, ready for redemption and punishment. I don't know what you're doing. You got some kind of show on your mind? Okay, I'll apologize. What's the big deal? Margaret went to pack, under the sympathetic glances of Doris, who, of course, did not know all the details of the night incident, but sincerely sympathized with her pet. Even if she had known, she would not have dared to contradict her master, though she did not understand his action in regard to poor Margaret. Where was it ever seen that a girl was tortured by her own father in the morning? Father and daughter drove to the hospital in silence, dissatisfied with each other. At the information desk, Kevin asked about the condition of the patient brought in yesterday. His name was Alvin. They were told that the young man had regained consciousness, no life-threatening injuries. He has a broken leg and a slight concussion, so he won't be an invalid when he recovers. Margaret asked. Probably not. I think he'll make a full recovery. The body is young. The fracture is not very complicated. There probably won't even be a limp left. They answered them. See, Dad, why did we have to come all the way out here at the crack of dawn? He's fine. It's just a leg and arm, but that's all. Don't frown. I'm here. I'll apologize, I told you. But I'm not going to lie on my feet. He's a good one, hanging around the roads in the middle of the night, probably drunk himself. Margaret had already completely calmed down about what had happened and the consequences her father was frightening her with. No, you're incorrigible. Kevin said irritably, How can you talk like that about a man you incapacitated? What will my apology do to him? Will he grow a new leg or something? This can be settled very simply with money. That's fine. If you have money, ask him how much he'll settle for. Or are you going to ride on someone else's coattails as usual? All right, let's go see our patient. Now I'll start apologizing if you want your daughter to be humiliated. Margaret made her way determinedly to the room. Hello, she said, not very friendly. Is your name Alvin? I'm Margaret. It's just, I did a bit of a number on you last night. I relaxed a little. It's a night street. There are no people. So I lost my guard for a moment, and then you jumped out. Why are you so careless on the streets at night? That's what happened, yes, but that's not what I mean. I'm sorry. In fact, I came to apologize and ask how you are doing. Do you need anything? Business? Well, as you can see, my leg's broken, but the rest is all right. Do you need anything? Yes, everything seems to be here. The young man answered. Of course they do. It's a private clinic. Everything is paid for. Medicines, procedures. You don't have to worry about that. Well, and in general, do not worry. Everything will pass. The leg will heal. The body is young, right? Yeah, I guess so. Nothing like this has ever happened to me before. Alvin answered languidly. Well, if you're careful, it won't happen again. We've been told that you won't even have a limp, so you'll be all right. The doctors here are good, so don't worry, lie down, get well. I'll leave you my phone number. If you need anything, call me. Everything will be, I think, at the highest level. Kevin came into the room and looked disapprovingly at his daughter, who was talking to the victim, not at all as she should. She caught the look in her father's eye, and then she looked up. Yes, so I'm wildly apologizing to you. I promise all the support, and I'm ashamed, honestly. Yeah, well, what's the big deal? Things happen, answered Alvin and looked at Kevin. I'm the father of this car enthusiast. All right, Margaret, you go out and sit in the hallway. I need to talk to the young man. Okay, I'd love to. Good day, young man. Get well. Eat lots of oranges. They have calcium, but I think they don't have potassium. But calcium, it's in milk and cottage cheese. Click on that too. Margaret could not resist and hurriedly headed for the exit of the ward. "Go already," her father said angrily to her, and Margaret left the men alone. She sat down on the sofa in the corridor and, yawning desperately, irritably began to ponder the meaning of her stay in this sad institution. Why had he brought me here? He could have gone alone. It's clear that this idiot only wants money, not my apologies. It's possible that he threw himself in front of the car on purpose. He saw the car was expensive, so he could milk the owners. Passers-by often do that. By the way, I've seen it in movies. He didn't spare his own leg, and I'm sitting here not having a good night's sleep because of him. Kevin sat down next to Alvin's bunk. "Yeah, my daughter's not used to apologizing. You'll have to excuse me for her, too. You've been hurt, I understand, but I hear you're not going to press charges, are you?" "I'm willing to pay whatever it takes. That won't be necessary at all." Coldly, Alvin replied, "I'm not going to report her. I'm thankful to be alive. Besides, you didn't leave me on the road, but sent me to a private clinic, which you paid for. I'm used to doing everything on my own and counting only on myself. Thank you very much, but because of the injury, you're going to have all sorts of difficulties. And I think that we have to help you in some way to correct the situation, that is, to eliminate the difficulties that will arise in connection with this accident. Again, thank you, but you will hardly be able to solve the difficulties that my injury will cause." Alvin grinned. And yet, Kevin insisted. He really wanted to help the boy. "The thing is, I'm a villager. I grew up there with my grandmother. She lives there now in the village. I came to the city myself. I'm studying at the institute. I have 1 year left. The vacation started. I was going to go there to my grandmother, to help her there in the vegetable garden, and in general, after all, she's not old anymore. And now I don't know how I will manage with my cast." Kevin began to ask the young man about his studies and found out that he was studying at the same institute as Margaret, but had not met her. Perhaps because the girl did not appear at lectures that often. Alvin was a serious student. He was a serious guy because he knew that everything depended only on him, on his abilities and diligence, and there was no one to help him. But the one who counted on his help was his grandmother, Wendy, who raised him after the death of his parents. Kevin listened to the story, frowning and thinking hard. When Alvin stopped talking, he smiled and said, "Well, young man, I have a mutually beneficial proposal for you. I hope you will accept it. By doing so, I will help you and you will help me." And he began to outline his plan. Kevin came out of the room and found his daughter flirting with the young doctor. Her father did not hesitate to interrupt the flirtation, taking Margaret by the elbow and dragging her to the exit. "Oh, Papa, why don't you let me talk to a man? We were talking about Alvin's health, by the way. This doctor, his name is Thomas. Well, he's sure there's nothing wrong with this victim." "Well, how'd you work it out? How much did it cost you? Don't worry when I graduate. I'll pay you back. Let's go to the car. I'll tell you how I made a deal with him." Putting his daughter in the salon, he did not tolerate objection's voice, told her about what awaits her in the next 3 months. "You've crippled a man, my soul. And there's no money for that." He was going to go to the village to his grandmother to help her with the vegetable garden and other domestic issues, but now he can't. He needs to take care of himself. So Alvin and I have decided to do this. You go with him to his village, and there you take good care of the injured man, through your fault, and also do all sorts of household chores that he cannot do through your fault. Is this a joke? What village, Dad? What are you doing? I'm on vacation. I'm not going to kill them to take care of Alvin and his sick leg, let alone his grandmother. What can I do in the village if I've never been there and have no idea what to do there? Margaret replied unhappily, not yet believing her father's intentions to be serious. "Yes, that is my omission, and now it will be corrected. You will go and nurse and learn everything. It's nothing. But if you don't, Alvin will file a complaint. Court proceedings will start, and I doubt you'll stay out. I mean, if you don't even get sent to a penal colony, you'll be sentenced to corrective labor for a much longer period than 3 months. I'm not going to buy you out. I'm telling you that right now. And think about your reputation. You'll be out of school, no profession, nothing." "Dad, if you're serious, it's too cruel." "Well, agree it's inhuman to send me to some unknown place to do absolutely unknown things." No, tell me you're kidding. Tell me you made a deal with this Alvin guy. Paid him all the money he needed, anything. Please, I'll even agree. I'll completely change my lifestyle, but please don't scare me like that." Already started to believe in the words of her father, the girl. "I'm not scaring you. I'm telling you correctly that everything will be as I said, and let's finish this conversation. Bargaining is not appropriate here," the father said sneeringly. Margaret, of course, did not fully believe in his words. That is, she thought that her father would cool down and cancel this monstrous decision. After all, she had one more remedy, which had so far helped her without fail: tears. She drove home quite calmly, saving up those tears to pour them out at home, especially in front of witnesses, in front of Doris, who would surely be on her side. She was not a very good defender, of course. She dared not say a word against her master, but still. When Margaret entered the apartment, she burst into tears and, without a word, rushed to her room. Doris frantically ran around the apartment. "What's wrong, Kevin? What about Margaret? Where have you been? Who hurt her? She hurt herself. And it would be nice if it was just herself. Help her pack her things. She's going away for 3 months." The housekeeper rushed to Margaret's room, hoping to find out the details of what had happened, and she was not mistaken. The girl, sobbing, told her what her father was going to do to her. Doris jumped out of her room and, for the first time in her life, probably, ran to Kevin's office, launching herself at him with angry accusations. "What on earth are you up to? You're going to do this to your own child. Where are you sending her, the poor girl? To what village? To take care of what kind of man?" "Go away, Doris. Don't interfere with my work," replied Kevin. "You work, but why ruin the child? Your only God-given daughter, a bitter orphan. Would Nancy know what you're going to do with her only daughter? Do you even know that this child of yours almost killed and maimed a man? And you're suggesting we let it go without any consequences? Let her go on walking. Let her go on racing through the streets at night. Let her hit everyone. Is that what you want? Do you realize how this could end? Prison, that's what. Let him live in the country for 3 months. Maybe he'll get his brains back. You, Adaman's bloodline, you'd finally get your brains back. Who did she kill? Our bright angel? She hit a slightly drunken fool who was walking the streets at night, and for that she sent a child to the village. Have you lived in the village yourself? I've lived there. I know what it's like there. And the girl, how will she feel there? Will she get better there? You'll take her out of there sick. Is that what you want? Stop it, Doris. No one's ever been hurt by life in the country. It's better than hanging out in the city or in the resorts. And leave me alone. It's her fault, and she has to answer for it. You can't do this to Margaret. Wait a minute, Kevin. Why don't we do this while we're at it? Why don't I go to the country for her? And I'll take care of this man and his grandmother, and what else is there to do? I'll do anything. I'll dig with my bare hands, but leave the girl alone. That's it, Doris. You leave me alone. If you're going to drive around the city at night and kill people, then you'll go to the village. But now I'm sorry. I've made my decision, and I'm not going to change it. Leave me alone, understand? Are you trying to give me a heart attack? No pleading, no tears, no threats, no mutual accusations. Nothing came of it. By the time Alvin was discharged from the hospital, he was met by Kevin's car, in which sat a gloomy, depressed Margaret. Together they drove to the village to visit the young man's grandmother. The drive was long, but the girl never uttered a single word. She never looked at the man who she thought had caused her such trouble in her life. When they finally arrived at Wendy's grandmother's house, and the girl saw where she was to spend the next 3 months, she burst into tears. Alvin got out of the car, went to say hello to her grandmother, and Margaret, once again, began to beg her father. "Daddy, I'm begging you, but you realize I'm going to die here, don't you? Don't leave me, please. That's it, you've punished me enough, I'm scared. You see? I understand and I agree. I'll stay home all the time. Help Aunt Doris. Do whatever you say, just please. Stop it, Margaret. It's done, and I'm not going backwards. I mean, I'll go back, but without you. You're going to stay here, and I don't see anything wrong with that. I'm not leaving you any money, so don't try to run away or get kicked out. You'll only make things worse for yourself. Now let's say goodbye." At the porch, Alvin was hugging his grandmother, Wendy. She was overjoyed at her grandson's arrival, but horrified that he had arrived in a cast and on crutches. "Don't worry, Grandma, I'm doing fine. I'll tell you later how and what happened, and my leg will soon be completely fine. You'll see. I'd like you to meet Margaret. She'll be staying with us for the summer, helping you around the house. I told you about her on the phone." "Yeah, I know. Hello, Margaret. Come in. I've prepared a room for you. You can rest there from the road, then eat, and tomorrow we'll do the work," the old woman said kindly. She looked a little like Doris, the housekeeper, and that reassured Margaret a little. Maybe the old woman would be kind enough not to burden her with silly jobs that she didn't understand at all. She was taken to a prepared room, small, but neat and bright. Of the furniture, there was only a simple iron bed, as in a hospital, a closet, and a bedside table. Well, at least it's not so scary. The girl sighed. "I thought I was going to live in a stable." She put her suitcase near the closet, decided to sort everything out later, and lay down on the bed with clean linen. She wanted to cry, but she realized that in this situation, tears would not help. Her father had already left, and these people, even if they felt sorry for her, what could they fix? Soon the hostess came in, inviting Margaret to the table. "I've prepared everything. It'll be delicious." "Come on, darling," Wendy called. Margaret had no appetite, but it was awkward to refuse. Besides, she wanted to see what dishes were in store for her in the near future. "Here's some soup for you." The hostess put a plate in front of her. "I'm sorry, I didn't know what kind of food you are used to. I was guided by my grandson. Alvin likes soup very much, so you should eat it. It's all your own. Don't think, put sour cream in it." Margaret looked almost with horror at the plate, where in the red broth were floating finely chopped vegetables, eggs, and meat. Margaret didn't want to eat anything, much less something like this. "I didn't know your tastes. It's clear you're used to other things, but if you have to live with us, you'll get used to it. Try the pies too. These with homemade jam and these with cabbage. Don't hesitate to try them." Margaret politely scooped up a spoonful of this strange soup and swallowed it. The taste was disgusting. But she didn't want to quarrel with her hosts, and even less to offend them. "Yes, thank you. It must be delicious, but I don't feel like eating right now. And besides, I got seasick in the car. "I'm sorry, I'll have some tea and a cake." Feeling like she was going to burst into tears, Margaret said, "God, should I eat some slop for 3 months?" She thought with horror. "I wish my father had killed me. It's like prison, slop, a cell. What's the difference? Although yes, in prison I would have to sit longer. Probably, and besides, there are criminals there. They would start to abuse me, and here people seem to be not bad. No, okay, I'll put up with it somehow, but my dad's wrong if he thinks being in a place like this is going to fix me." Wendy apparently saw that her guest was in extremely upset feelings and promised, "I see, you want something tastier, girl. Well, I'll roast a chicken tonight. Won't I, Alvin? You wouldn't say no to chicken, would you?" "No, I wouldn't. I can imagine you guys cooking chicken around here." I thought Margaret, poor peasant, she probably doesn't know how normal people eat. But what am I supposed to do? Not starve to death. What could I eat here myself? I can't imagine. But even if there was a good cafe or restaurant, I don't have any money. And Wendy suddenly said, "Margaret, if you're here to help, cut your nails. They'll get in the way. And if you break them, it will hurt." The girl looked at her perfectly grown nails in horror. "Is there a beauty parlor here? Or even a manicurist? I can't just cut them off. I need to have them professionally removed." "Take them off? What do you put them on? We don't." "That's good," Margaret thought. "What am I going to be like here in 3 months? And how will I recover after such a vacation in the village?" Meanwhile, Alvin finished his lunch and stood up on his crutches. "I think Margaret can handle her claws on her own. You, Granny, lie down and rest for a while. You can take it easy now. I'll show our assistant where everything is and familiarize her with the work. But the nails, yes, to avoid injuries. Scissors?" Thank you. I have my own. I'll do them tonight. But in the meantime, give me a tour of your estate." Margaret grinned wryly. "Clip your fingernails first and dress comfortably. Do you have a tracksuit or anything like that?" "I've got everything, don't worry." Margaret replied defiantly, heading off to her room to make herself look fit for the village. That is, she didn't know how to dress in the village, and she didn't have anything to wear. The outfits she had brought with her, with the expectation of striking the landscape to her heart's content. Alvin, however, was not very much impressed. She examined Margaret's costume, rather with a sneer, and began to introduce her to the yard and house. Well, not a grand estate, but still knowing what and where is necessary, and also familiarizing yourself with what you will have to do. Here, as you see the vegetable garden, when it comes to business, I'll show you what there is to pull and what to water. Oh, God? Margaret sighed. How much do you have to pull, much less water? Do you have to go for water with a pail? If you have learned to command the buckets like that, Emilia, they will bring everything themselves. But if not, then apparently, yes. Well, wait a girl to be discouraged. It's not so terrible as you imagine. By the way, my grandmother is not some illiterate old village woman. She has a higher education. She worked as a school principal for a long time and did not curve herself after the institute and lives in the village. She doesn't consider it humiliation, so don't worry. She knows how to educate people, both small and big. Well, let's see how she brings me up. I'll tell you right away, I don't like it here, and I don't like this yard either. What kind of a mess is this? If your grandmother is not the last person in the village, people should help her. Former students, for example, I don't know who else, neighbors, friends. You shouldn't have brought me here at all. Neither me nor Grandma dragged you here, in case you hadn't noticed. It was your father's initiative, who's concerned about your lifestyle. For better or worse, You'll have to get used to a simple life. By the way, this is called a chicken coop. With chickens will not be a lot of fuss, although they, of course, people like that, for them to clean and feed and watch. You see, everything is fenced with netting. It's to prevent them from flying all over the garden and pecking what you don't want. Why don't you go catch some? Why else? Margaret asked squeamishly. Why else? Are you going to eat something? That's why you have to catch a chicken, and then everything else. It's quite normal. It's such a country life. Go on, go on, go on. That white one's better. What to catch them with? Do you have some kind of net, or I don't know, a net or something? No, we catch chickens with our hands. Go and catch them. It's no big deal. They're not wild animals. They won't eat you. Margaret went to the netted pen to catch a chicken. She did not think about what would happen next. She didn't know how to catch a chicken either. She thought that she could just walk up and get the right bird and try to do so. But all the chickens scattered, who went wherever. Kitty, there's a white one. I mean, no, chicken, chicken. Come to me, come to me. Look, here are my grains. Showing her empty palm, Margaret spoke as affectionately as possible. The chickens did not respond to her call. Realizing that persuasion was not an option, Margaret climbed into the pen and immediately fell to all fours, cursing and cursing. She got up and went to fetch the chicken that had been sentenced to slaughter. With difficulty, and falling several more times, she seized the unfortunate one, went out from behind the corral, approached Alvin, and only then noticed that he was laughing merrily. I think I was sent here to be corrected, not to be laughed at. Angrily, the girl said, You yourself should be corrected. If you have to do unpleasant hard work, can't you make it more comfortable? A net? I don't know. At least a rag of some kind, so that this chicken could be caught without getting soaked in mud. Here, take it. Take what? There's a hatchet. Put it on that plank and put its head on it, explained Alvin. What? Margaret was puzzled. Do I have to kill her? Well, you can't roast it alive. Then you have to pluck it. Margaret, still not believing what was happening, stood holding the chicken, which was fluttering nervously in her hands. The girl lowered her eyes to the bird, looked into its frightened black eye, and released it from her hands. Yes, you, yes, you. Gasping, she shouted and ran behind the house. There she sat down on the ground and cried. How do they live in these villages? It's cannibalism, she thought. To take care of this chicken, even to love it, and then to slaughter it, skin it, and eat it. How is that possible? How do they eat people they know? Well, okay, chicken is good. There are lots of chickens. They probably don't live long and don't have time to get so used to them. But I've seen this Aunt Wendy talking to a cow, stroking it like her own, and then killing it, making cutlets, and eating it. It's impossible. It's sadistic. She probably explained to her students about love for nature, animals, friends. It's not people who live here, but some freaks. Wiping her tears, she thought. There was a clatter of crutches. Alvin came and stood next to her. Why are you crying? You've never eaten meat, have you? Vegetarian? He asked mockingly. I've eaten everything, and I've eaten things you've never seen before, and I'll continue to do so, don't doubt it. But I've never killed anyone, and I've never had to eat anyone I knew alive either, I'm sorry. And I won't do it. I don't understand how this is possible. How do you live? It's not normal. You almost killed me, reminded Alvin. I wasn't trying to kill you on purpose. I wasn't chasing you. I wasn't going to eat you. It was just an accident, an unfortunate accident. I agree it was my fault. I'm whatever you want me to be, but understand, I can't even eat a chicken I've seen alive, warm. And you say chop off the head. How can you do that? It's idiotic. It's not idiotic. It's life, village life. If we eat only cabbage and carrots, we won't live long. You see how much work there is here, and you won't live either, and you'll be fine eating the chickens you've seen. And not just chickens. There's nothing awful about it. Of course it's not horrible for you, but you're welcome to carve whoever you want, and I'm not going to. I'm more of a seafood guy. Do you think fish are inanimate? Doesn't want to live? Or eat something, I don't know, mussels, octopus, oysters. By the way, the fish in the restaurant are also alive. They catch them from the aquarium and then fry them before your eyes, even if they're still twitching. Isn't that right? Well, yes, it happens. But for some reason it's not so bad for the fish, but it's bad for the bird. I'm not eating that chicken, okay? I'm not gonna look at it roasted, dead, whatever. Let it live or kill it yourself and eat it, and I'm not going to. Margaret wouldn't give up, but we'll see how much humanity you have. If you get hungry, you'll do something else. We'll see. Margaret muttered. She thought to herself, if my father knew what they were doing to me, he would kill you. The girl didn't think about what her father would do. She got up and went into the house. She would have to learn and learn a lot more. The chicken, of course, was slaughtered, roasted, served for dinner, but Margaret did not leave her room, although the appetizing aroma tantalized her, causing an unprecedented feeling of hunger. Wendy entered the room with a knock. "What's the matter, sweetheart? Are you feeling sorry for the chicken?" She asked without mockery, but rather with sympathy. Imagine that. The girl said resentfully, "I don't understand it. I'm not judging anyone, okay? You have to eat. You have to cook. You have to do everything. But I don't understand how you can eat someone you've known for years. And just 5 minutes ago, she was alive, struggling, looking at me. How can you eat her? Go try it." Wendy grinned. "But yes, I understand. The first time is hard for someone who's not used to it. And Alvin's wrong. I shouldn't have forced you to do it. You'll understand a lot once you're here. I guess I'll have to live here, but I'll understand." "No, I can't understand it. I don't want to, I'm sorry. And I won't be here long, and I won't need it in my future life." "Stop it, girl, stop it," Wendy said sternly, and Margaret suddenly saw clearly that this was no ordinary kind old woman, but a teacher. And a teacher, apparently, who knew what she was doing. "It is clear that for now it is difficult for you, but then everything will go normally. You will understand everything about chickens and everything else. We raise animals for food and not only for our own. So, girl, stop playing dumb. If you're going to live in the village, don't pretend to be a hereditary princess." Wendy left the room. Margaret sighed. Yes, she understood that chickens and cows were eaten, but it was hard for her to realize it fully. "I'm sure it's not just for the first time. I can't live like them at all," she thought stubbornly. "But you'll have to," said the harmful inner voice. Yes, she had to learn everything soon. Where could she go? At the end of this long and hard day, she asked Alvin, "Where do they wash? Can showers at least be taken here?" "We don't keep showers. There's a bathhouse if you want one, and flood it. I myself, I can't chop wood or heat the stove. My hands are full of crutches. Thanks to you, sorry to remind you. So you'll have to learn on your own and drown the bathhouse. It's no big deal." "Chopping wood is not a woman's job," Margaret said glumly. "I understand, and don't think, Margaret, that I'm saying this to mock you. I mean, how am I going to do it? And it's ridiculous to ask Grandma, too. She's going to try to hire someone anyway, and that means you have to pay." Alvin explained, "Who stopped you from taking money from my father? It would have been enough for 10 helpers, much more skillful than me. But no, we are poor but proud. How will I chop wood? Have you thought about it? What if I get hurt? Don't worry, no one will make you chop 2 difficult logs. Besides, I'll be there to show you." The chopping of wood was almost injury-free, for a few rather large splinters should not be mistaken for serious trouble. Wendy pulled them out quickly and painlessly, saying, "Take care of your hands. You've got a lot of work to do, and you're not going to get hurt. Take care of your hands." Did Margaret or did she not take care of her hands? Did she not take care of them? But that was in a previous life, and that's what she had to take care of her hands for. For work, milking cows, cleaning dung, chopping wood. In the village the next day, Wendy got her up at dawn and took her to the barn to milk the cow and then drive her out to the herd. But couldn't it be done later? The girl was angry, not having slept well. To get up so early because of a cow? Your kind soul, you are sorry that animals are killed, and you are not sorry if she will stand like this, with a full udder and suffer. If instead of going out to pasture, she stands in a stuffy barn, asked Wendy. "I feel sorry for myself. I want to sleep," whined Margaret. "That's it. That's your humanity. You feel sorry for the animals, but when you want to sleep, you don't care about them. And when you're hungry, you'll eat them with pleasure. You think of yourself first, the cow too. I don't know how to milk. I'm going to hurt her, and then what?" Margaret tried to give up her unpleasant job. "You can't do anything. I'll show you everything. It's a simple science." Science may not be easy, but it wasn't easy either. Margaret had never realized that a cow had to be milked so long and so hard. Rising from the process and with difficulty straightening her back and aching arms, she asked Wendy, "How did they milk 2 or 3 cows at a time?" "It's a beastly thing to do. My arms fall off. You're not used to milking 10 cows. Don't cry. You'll see in a week. You won't notice how you'll milk her. It's no big deal." Of course, there was nothing to be afraid of, but after this morning milking, she had to weed the garden, carry water, do something else. "Now go and get some rest," Wendy told her. Margaret, entering her room, realized with amazement that it was only noon, and she was already so tired. It would be good to be seriously ill now and have Daddy come and get me and see what's the matter with me, and regret doing that to me. That Alvin, all he had to do was jump out on the road like a fool and think his leg was broken and he'd heal. I think my back's broken too. It hurts like crazy. All my arms ache. But before she could rest, Wendy came into the room. "What's the helper doing?" "Let's go make dinner." "What dinner?" "I can't cook. I can't even eat." "I'm tired. I don't want to." Almost crying, the girl replied, "What do you mean I don't want to, if I have to? Get up, come on." The landlady was not going to give up. "Why on earth would you make fun of me like that? After all, I don't need my legs to cook dinner. Let Alvin help me. I think he has his hands where they belong. That's what women are supposed to do. Come on, let's go. Should women chop wood too? Do women have to carry water? What do men have to do in your village? I don't understand this division of labor. Men have a lot of work to do too. Alvin can't do it now. His leg is broken. Stop arguing. You didn't come here to argue. You came here to learn how to do things." "No, I can't cook, and I'm not going to learn. I don't need it." "What do you mean you don't need it? You're a woman. You should know how to cook. How are you going to live?" "I'm going to live fine. I'm going to live the way I've been living. I have a housekeeper." Margaret didn't give up. "And if the housekeeper refuses to work for you?" What would you do then? Starve to death yourself and torture your family? Wendy was beginning to lose her patience. I won't torture anyone. One will refuse, the other will. If the housekeeper refuses, where will she go without my money? And if you run out of money, then what will you do? I'm not going to run out. I'm going to work and earn a lot. I'll have everything, don't worry. I don't understand how you live. You work from morning till night, and by the way, you're an intelligent woman. You graduated from an institute you worked. And now what? How old are you? And you continue to work. Is this, in your opinion, a life? In my opinion, that's what life is. Work is the only thing that keeps me afloat. I don't want to be afloat like you, so that in my old age my back hurts, my hands hurt, everything hurts, and my assistant comes once a year, and not every time. But grumbling, Margaret got up and groaned, both from the pain in her back and in her legs, and wandered to the kitchen. I don't like this kind of life, understand, Wendy? I don't know how you manage it, but I wasn't born for it. It's not what I'm used to, and I don't want to be used to it. So when I left here, I'm not going back to the country. If you, like my father, think that I'll get better from such a life, you're mistaken. I won't get better. I'll get worse. Now you probably think that I am the worst, lazy, wicked, so-and-so. But by the way, I'm not like that at all. I was normal in the city. I was fun, everybody loved me, and no one would ever think I was doing anything wrong. Except for your father, who kept you and took care of your problems. Wendy grinned. Oh, don't give me a hard time about it. You tell me what to do. All right, I'll do my time in this prison and see if my father will be happy about the change. Why do you talk about your father like that, Papa? He loves you. Peel the potatoes. Don't you know how to do that too? I not only don't know how to do it, I never eat potatoes, except occasionally in the form of chips. Potatoes are bad for you. Margaret announced, I don't know what's good for you to eat, my dear, sighed the old woman, and so life went on day after day. Strange as it may seem, Wendy was right. Every day Margaret found it easier and easier to fulfill her daily duties. She learned a lot, got used to a lot. Only her own appearance horrified her more and more every day. The gorgeous manicure and pedicure were gone. The tan from the sun in the middle zone was uneven. The skin on her hands had become rough, and even the shape of her hands seemed worse than before. And the damned mosquitoes, they bit the girl so much that sometimes it seemed that they would eat her alive. Let the father admire what a beauty his daughter had become. Let him bite his elbows when I come back. Evil, she thought. But okay, father. It was much more frightening to think about how her old acquaintances would perceive her. If she came back, who would see her like this? They wouldn't recognize her. Her father had left her a phone, so she could talk to her friends sometimes. Naturally, she didn't tell anyone about milking cows or tilling potatoes. She said she was on vacation in Bali. Her father had bought her a trip. And to think that Margaret herself was in the countryside, working hard, such a thing could not even cross anyone's mind. One time, though, a cow almost gave her away. Margaret came to milk her cow, washed her udder, put it on a bench, and then the phone rang in her apron pocket. She picked up the phone, her chatterbox friend, asked where you were, and then the cow, dissatisfied with such a delay, suddenly howled. Oh, what have you got there? Even frightened my friend. How could she know how cows moo? It's just the guys. They are playing a prank. Margaret answered and interrupted the call, annoyingly slapping the cow on the side. Why do you have to cry at this very minute? You saw I was busy. And started milking. Yes, I managed to get rid of my friend, but when she arrives and they see her, It's no lie. They'll know what spa treatments she's had and what beaches she's been sunbathing on. Yes, I have such a view, as if I myself, this cow chewed and spit out. With horror thought the girl, and imagined what it will be like for her to return home. How long would she have to clean herself up, hiding from everyone she knew? Alvin and Wendy also noticed the changes in Margaret, but they liked them. Perhaps they saw them as a sign that the girl was changing for the better. Indeed, when she went out in the morning to milk the cow or to do some other chores, she looked like an ordinary country girl in the chintz dress given by Wendy, in the simple kerchief covering her hair. She looked very simple and sweet, becoming closer and more understandable. Once Alvin even dared to have an informal conversation with her. In the afternoon, after some ordinary household chores, he said, "Did you bring your bathing suit? Let's go for a swim," cheerfully suggested the young man. "Do you have a place to swim here?" Margaret was surprised. Indeed, there was no river nearby. There was only a small muddy lake where only boys dared to bathe. There is a river, but it's a long way to it. We'll go on foot, because I'm not riding a bicycle now, you know. Well, let's go and see what kind of river there is. I'd love to take a dip. Of course, I have a bathing suit in the village, after all, went to rest. The girl grinned. It didn't take more than an hour to get to the local beach, even with Alvin's crutches. On the beach, Margaret threw off her sundress and went into the water. Alvin, of course, didn't swim. He sat under a tree, looked at the girl, and realized that he liked her. And still we are not a couple, he thought, looking at Margaret, who without simple clothes, in a beautiful swimsuit, again turned into an inaccessible beauty. In a little while she would go home and remember this summer with horror. Perhaps after what happened, we will become even strangers to each other. They had a good time, but Alvin felt that he could have nothing in common with this girl, and he was not mistaken. The summer months flew by, and with them Margaret's penal servitude ended. She went home, happy and contented. Margaret bade farewell to her hosts quite warmly, but no more. There were no promises to come again or to keep in touch. Margaret clearly wanted to forget the past. Undoubtedly, the past summer had had its effect on her. She really got her mind right. A year later, Margaret graduated from the Institute and did quite well. Thanks to that, Kevin hired her at his firm. It is not known whether that summer link so influenced her, or perhaps Margaret simply matured, but she behaved differently at home. It was as if the girl realized for the first time that Doris was already very old, and it was difficult for her to manage the household alone. Margaret began to help the old housekeeper quite fully. Doris refused at first, even resented and cried, "What am I here for? Why did you mop the floors? Why did you cook? Is that your business? You need to study and go out sometimes. You only get to be young once. I've had my fun, Doris. I've got to get used to adult life, and I think you've had enough. You lived in the country when you were young, wasn't it hard? Yeah. What was that? What's there to remember? Yes, compared to city life, I'll tell you. It's work. When I arrived, I couldn't find a place for myself. What's there to do here? There's hot and cold water, radiators, washing in the machine, vacuuming. So it's not hard for me now, it's my business. And you should do your own, and look for a fiancé, that's what. It's about time." But Margaret had no recollection of a life of debauchery. After coming from the village, she really did not meet friends for some time, embarrassed by her appearance. And then she suddenly realized that she was not interested in all these parties, clubs, hangouts, and just as Doris had once done, she didn't know where to put herself. She woke up before dawn and only when she opened her eyes did she remember that she no longer had to milk the cow. Instead of relief, I was bewildered. What to do then? Studying is studying, but also physical work, asking for a trained, accustomed to work, the body. And no fitness, no jogging did not help. Probably thanks to this she, though not brilliantly, but well graduated from the institute, then diligently worked, and her father had no reason to blush for his daughter. But he never mentioned the past to her, only rejoiced at how much Margaret, his indomitable in the past, had changed. With Alvin, Margaret, strangely enough, almost did not see, although he studied at the same institute. Margaret didn't want to get in his face. It was there in the village they had almost become friends, and now who knows what he would think. He would come up and reminisce in a friendly way about the cowshed, about how she caught chickens, and in front of all the honest people, or even worse, he would tell others how this proud beauty had lived in the village all summer at his service. After all, for all friends, acquaintances, Margaret spent that summer in Bali, and not that bad that her lies will be revealed. Far worse that everyone would find out about the village and her summer's activities. That's how they graduated without ever meeting or talking about anything. Alvin apparently still had the sense not to mention it to anyone and not to remind her. I realized it wasn't the fondest memory. And then, after graduation, Margaret calmed down. Now he can talk about her wherever he wants. They're in different realities now, and there's not much chance of them meeting. However, it turned out that this was not the case. One morning at a meeting where Margaret was present, Kevin introduced a new employee, this Alvin. It was a surprise and not at all pleasant. Margaret herself did not know that she was still angry with this young man for getting under the wheels of her car, for agreeing to Kevin's cruel plan, and now he had broken into the firm as if he had been called here. It means fearing exposure again, and it would have been okay before, when she was a student, there it was possible to translate everything into a joke, or hope that soon the training will be over and everyone will scatter who went where. And now she is not a cheerful student Margaret, but a leading specialist, a strict, stylish lady, and suddenly she'll break through someday. Remember when you used to chop wood? Determined not to let that happen, Margaret walked into her father's office. "Dad, what is this Alvin guy doing in our firm? Do you think I like it very much that he will be in front of my eyes again, hanging around all day long?" She asked indignantly. "He's not running around, he's working." "Strictly," said Kevin. "And I don't see what the problem is. He graduated from the institute with a red diploma, became a serious specialist. So what's the problem? I don't think there should be any friction between you two. That's just your opinion. Do you think I'm happy to see him and remember those vacations that you arranged with him in collusion?" Angrily interrogated the daughter. "Stop it, Margaret. First of all, you said I arranged it, but you don't hate seeing me every day, do you? And second of all, it's time to let bygones be bygones. We don't go to work to look at nice people, we go to work. So you're not going to fire him." My daughter frowned. "Do you have any idea what I had to endure?" "Like what? He beat you, tormented you, insulted you?" "As far as I remember, he never said a bad word. And on what grounds? Because he once agreed to take me up on a proposal I didn't think you'd like. I'm sorry, darling, but at this rate, I'll have to fire the whole firm. Suddenly, it will turn out that so-and-so in kindergarten, on your potty without asking, and another on the bus kicked his leg. Enough arguments. I'm not going to fire anyone at your will. Alvin stays with us, and you bring him up to speed. That's the end of the matter. Go and do your job." "Oh, yeah. So you're not going to take what I say seriously?" "Okay, so I'll just have to submit. like I always do." Margaret gritted her teeth and left the office. Her father's words did not reconcile her with Alvin. On the contrary, she was determined to get him out of the way at all costs. "Well, Daddy, to you, your daughter means nothing. I'll prove to you that an employee like that does more harm than good. Your Alvin will fly out like a cork, and you'll be forced to recognize my rightness." Angrily thought the girl, having decided to get Alvin out of the firm by her own efforts. Now she wanted not only to get rid of the man she disliked, but also to prove to her father that she was right. "Alvin may be a good specialist, but he brings only misfortune to me, and I am sure he will bring a lot of trouble to the whole firm, so my father will have to thank me for getting rid of Alvin," she thought stubbornly, and she began to set up the one she considered an enemy in a sneaky way, without giving any sign of doing so. But in her perversion of the setup, she did not notice that she herself had made a mistake. Through Margaret's fault, a very important contract for the firm was disrupted. However, even this, the girl considered it a chance to realize her devious plans, because she and Alvin worked together. However, she could not blame the young man directly, so they had to answer to their father together. Kevin was furious. After all, this contract was vital. How could two such promising professionals? Let's say that one of them missed it, but the other could have warned, could have eventually informed me of the impending mistake. Or was it a provocation? Why are you silent? I would like to hear who is to blame for what happened. Margaret had already taken the air in her chest to blame Alvin. She would be ashamed to lie, but it was no easier to bear her father's anger. Before she could speak, however, the young man spoke up. "I'm sorry, Kevin. It must have been my fault. Margaret tried to warn me, but I didn't listen. I decided that my decision was more correct. Yes, it was my fault that the contract fell through. I am prepared to suffer any punishment." His speech was a complete surprise to the girl, but she did not object. She just did not dare. The father continued his angry speech. "Punishments, forfeit your bonus, postpone your vacation to wintertime? No, I'm sorry, Alvin. I can't tolerate people in my firm who are capable of such mistakes." Alvin was fired. Margaret got off with a severe reprimand and a guilty conscience. She didn't say anything that day. She didn't have the guts. She drove home in a terrible mood, and as she passed the place where she had first met Alvin, that is, where he himself had met her automobile, the girl stopped, dropped her head on her hands folded on the steering wheel. Again it was her fault a man was hurt. He took her guilt upon himself, saved her from her father's wrath, perhaps from being fired or demoted, neither of which is such a terrible misfortune. And Alvin himself, of course, will not be unemployed for long, but how will she, Margaret, will look in his eyes? Who would she be in the memory of this man who had been so noble and unselfish? It would be better if he remembered her as a silly girl who could not kill a chicken, and now he would remember her as a mean and cowardly woman who, afraid of her father, could frame anyone. And most importantly, she would be safe. Margaret raised her head and only then realized that her face was flooded with tears. She wiped her eyes resolutely, angry with herself now. She had done a mean thing, but it was in her power to make it right. Tonight she would tell her father, find Alvin, and apologize to him. Yeah, it'll be too late, but what can you do? I can't turn back the clock. I'll quit if I have to. Margaret drove home, determined to right her wrong. You know, Papa, I must confess to you that I've done something very, very wrong again. She told her father at home. That mistake that Alvin confessed was mine. He warned me, but I didn't pay attention. So it was me who should have been fired, not him. So you knew that, but you kept your mouth shut in my office? Yeah, I didn't do it because I was afraid you'd punish me in some way, but because I was against Alvin from the start. You remember that? Don't ask me why. It's more serious than I said. And at the time, I thought I had a chance to get rid of him. And now you know how I feel. Yeah. And I suspected something like that from the beginning, but it's not like Alvin could be that stupid. Yeah, he confessed and you didn't say anything. I thought he was telling the truth. Does that make you feel different now? I wonder how I'm supposed to feel after what happened. I want to get Alvin's address and apologize to him. I hope you'll change your mind, keep him at the firm, and I'll quit if I have to. I'll apologize, of course, but I don't know what his decision will be. I don't know what yours will be either. Will you quit? Would that change anything? How could you not say anything? Why did you want him to leave the firm so badly? Why do you keep putting me in situations where I feel most helpless? Why helpless? Besides, it's not your fault. You just didn't know. And the reason for my attitude towards Alvin? I'm sorry, but that's something I can only tell him. Yes, it's hard to suspect your daughter of doing something like that, even if you know her like the back of your hand. Alvin's address, I don't know how I know it, but you can ask Human Resources. His firing order hasn't been signed yet. And if you, today, go and explain everything with him, he can come back tomorrow and continue working. If, of course, he wants to work in such a firm where people set each other up without a wince. You're right, of course, and he'll be right not to come back to the firm. Give me the phone number of the head of HR. At least she probably has the addresses of all the employees on her computer. Alvin's address and phone number were easily recognized. Margaret called him immediately. Alvin, it's me. Are you home right now? I want to come over and talk to you. About what, Margaret? I doubt we have anything to talk about. Coldly, the young man replied, I don't doubt it. You taught me a lot of things in the village, but the main lesson I learned is here. That's what I want to talk to you about. I hope you won't refuse me. Can I come over? I don't know. If you want to come over. I'm not going anywhere myself. I'm very tired. Margaret started to get ready for Alvin. I don't know what you'll say to him, and will he want to listen to you? Kevin doubted. But he didn't say no, he said come, so I'll go. Determinedly, the girl said. She didn't know what she was going to say or where this conversation would lead, but she couldn't go. She made no plans even on the way. Although the way to the young man's house was not so close. When she arrived, she rang the doorbell, and as soon as Alvin opened it, she said quickly, I came to apologize and thank you. To be honest, I didn't expect you to be so honorable. Just take all the blame and accept the dismissal. There's nothing wrong with quitting. I'll get a job anyway, but it's the fact that I agreed to it. You know, Margaret, I saw that you didn't like me working at your firm and suspected that you would make me quit someday anyway. Well, what can I do, so I'll leave. There's nothing wrong with that. Not to you, but it is to me. I don't want you to quit. I told my father everything, and he's agreed to let you come to work tomorrow. No one knows about the conversation that took place in his office. There's no order to fire you. You'll just come in and work as before. Please don't go. I'm begging you. It's very important to me that you stay. You see, I don't want to stay if you're not there. Margaret held back her tears. She didn't want to burst into tears. It would look like she was begging for something, and she wasn't going to ask him for anything. She really wanted Alvin to stay, and she wanted to explain the reason for that, but he was the first to speak frankly. I'm not really saying no. All right, I'll stay, but you know, Margaret, it's not even because working at your father's firm is so important to me. I just want to see you every day, you know? Alvin didn't expect those words to come out of his mouth. He would never have dared to confess his feelings to Margaret in another situation, but now it came out of his own mouth, and his hands came to rest on the girl's shoulders. Suddenly, she buried her face in his shoulder. "You know, Alvin." Muffled, she said, "I don't know whether you're confessing your love or just saying that, but I have to tell you, to confess that I didn't want to fire you because you didn't suit me, but because I didn't think I'd ever confess what you meant to me. Ever since that summer in the village, I've felt that you're not a stranger to me. I mean, you know. But I was afraid I didn't mean anything to you, so I did this. I'll tell you what I was really afraid of. I thought you might start courting some other girl in front of me, and I couldn't take it. Well, I've confessed everything, and now you can do what you want. You can quit, you can laugh and kick me out. I'm not gonna quit, and I never expected you to admit that. But since you said it, yes, I loved you back in the village, and now. I was afraid every day that someone would say, 'Let's buy a present. Margaret's getting married.' Why didn't you say anything?" Margaret exclaimed, "In the village and now, didn't you feel that we were not strangers? I was afraid we were not a couple, afraid of rejection, afraid of ridicule. Of course, there was no mockery. The next day, Alvin returned to the firm as if nothing had happened. A short time later, there was talk of Margaret and Alvin's imminent marriage. Kevin was pleased with his daughter's decision. "Congratulations, Margaret. You've made the right choice. To tell you the truth, if it had started then, in the village or even now, before your fatal mistake, I probably would have been against it, suspecting Alvin of some kind of calculation. But now I see clearly that it is you he loves and not the position which, by means of kinship with me, he can obtain. I see now that it is this man who can make you happy," he said to his daughter, blessing the forthcoming marriage.